Hi, I'm James Gerde, and I'm optimistic about the future of the entertainment industry, and I'm a little bit pessimistic about the parasocial relationship people can grow with a lot of emerging tech and where we're at.
Future Optimist.
Well, welcome to the show, James. So good to have you here. And
Absolutely.
I'm a big admirer of your work, and I recognize instantly that you draw a lot of attention for your work. I think positive and negative. You're sort of starting a movement. It's not just you as an artist anymore. You seem to represent something. So before we kind of launch into the conversation, can you tell us just a little bit about your rise to fame, what exactly you do, how you see yourself?
It's interesting. As much as nothing kind of happens overnight, I kind of have one of those stories where it sort of is that. However, that comes off of years of behind the scenes work. For a number of years, I was running a small film production studio. And by that, I mean, I was running around Seattle with my camera, filming music videos for musicians, as well as doing some commercial work, really whatever I could get my hands on. I was a professional videographer and photographer and was just taking work and making stuff. And I got really, really invested in some of these early AI animation tools, Stable Diffusion Forum, Warp Fusion. They were fascinating to me. It was my favorite thing in the world. A friend and I really got into it. And I would get done with like working at nightclubs every night, filming, and I would come home and just do that. And it's interesting, we're like a week from today is the 3-year mark from the one that I posted that did 30 million views, the first one that was like really, really big.
Yeah.
And I remember I was 24 hours after I posted the first one, because it didn't, it took a second to get really big, but it was starting to do well. And I had a show with my band, and I was sitting in the green room, and it was at like 100,000 plays, and I hadn't really looked at it because I was prepping for this show and I was doing stuff. And I looked at it and I was like, 100,000 is weird. This is kind of a weird thing that's going on. And then after that, it really started to take off, and I sat down with my now business partner, Jordan, who's also my best friend, and we've owned companies together. We've done a lot of work together. And he said, if you really want to maximize this, you should post every day. And so I did that for 90 days. I posted every day, which back then doing one of these videos took about 8 hours of render time. It wasn't
Wow.
by any means fast.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of all of that, I'm working on the biggest gigs that I've ever had, huge names and companies and people are coming to me and want work from me. And I'm trying to balance doing that and still getting posts out on top of it. And it was, things have mostly leveled out now. Or I said 3 years in. I mean 2 years in, but 2 years in, things have more or less leveled out now, and I get to kind of just make the things I want, and get to act in this commercial space as well. A lot of people come to us looking for not just the viral success, but the philosophy that goes along with it. Because originally things went up and my Instagram account went to like 800,000 followers. But the real sell
That's
to
crazy.
this was that my Instagram got so big, but the videos themselves on other platforms posted by other people,
Right.
they got just as big everywhere else, just not really attached to me. And for a while, that kind of, wasn't great. But I can walk down the street now, and chances are, if I ask somebody if they've seen the Dancing Hercules video or a video of Dancing Leaves, or, there's a number of them in there that are just huge at this point. The chances are they've seen one of my videos somewhere, and that's incredible. Just from a marketing standpoint of like people just know my work. And then as an artistic side of things, at this point, people like it. Like I don't get the hate like I did in the early days. That really actually doesn't cross over as much. For the first like 6 months, it was a lot of people being like, oh, AI stuff, whatever. And that kind of helped it grow because it got pushed out more. But nowadays it's pretty much all positivity associated with it. And I think that has to do with kind of like the type of creations I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
making stuff that is meant to make people feel good and is meant to be pretty and just be something to I'm making things simply to be enjoyed, not just kind of turn heads. And I think that's I wanted to leave a positive mark. So that's kind of the direction that I go now.
That's amazing. Well, there aren't many Instagram accounts, I think, in the whole world that get 1 million likes on any post. And you have some of those 900,000 plus likes, not just views, but likes. And that speaks that clearly you've tapped into something massive. The way that you move pixels around on the screen is obviously something that people find very enjoyable or fascinating. I think broadly speaking, if I'm accurate in saying this, you take human-based movement and you recontextualize it in another way. And it's something about the marriage of very human movement with scenes and scenarios that people don't expect that creates the magic of what you're doing. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had motion capture for a long time, and we've also had standard animation for a very long time. And there's a reason that, especially when we have 3D animation in more of like a realism space, that motion capture is used. And it mostly comes down to just it gives a feeling that's much more natural to the eyes. And it gets rid of like so much of the issue with generative stuff right now is the uncanny valley. There's a lot of like, it looks kind of weird, it doesn't look right. And it's not even that the stuff looks bad, it's just that the human eye is really good at telling when something isn't human. And so when you have too many of those things, it can kind of be a little bit off-putting. And I know that personally, I don't really like it, which
Yeah.
is why I try to stay away from a lot of the just like video model stuff. I mess around with it a little bit here and there, but a lot of it just doesn't look good to me.
Mm.
What I think looks good is being able to restyle and retexture things in ways that, I can imagine and then just figure out, and doing that with performance. And kind of the reason where that started was when I got into doing all of this with Warp Fusion, I was using a lot of stock footage because I was essentially making tech demos. I was practicing like motion capture, and dance was kind of the big one because it was the most interesting kind of movement. Like if you wanted to practice with different eccentric movements, dance was going to be like the most engaging, instead of just like a person walking or basically anything else somebody could be doing. Dancing's the most expressive. And as I was doing that, I was kind of like, there's this huge community of people doing this online. And at first it was like popular TikTok dances because I'm not a dancer myself. And so I moved into that route, and that's obviously what blew up, were more like hip TikTok dances. And then kind of as things settled out and I figured out what I wanted to do, I moved into more of a contemporary and ballet space because that's more what speaks to me and what I like personally, versus just what's popular. And it was a big risk at the time because who knows how much of the initial blow up was because I was using videos that were already really popular. But now I've kind of flipped that. And instead of playing off of things that are already popular, I'm popularizing a whole genre of performance. And so there's like a lot of dancers that have really, really small followings that I've kind of pushed into this space, and it's all kind of come up.
That's incredible. So talk to me about some of the hate and the backlash in the early days. What was the source of that?
Oh, it's the internet. I
Is
mean,
there a
because
reason?
there are places where it still happens. That's
Okay.
really funny. So I have multiple Instagram accounts, and that mostly came up because I don't make things that all fit in one place, and so I make things that go other places. So on my third Instagram account, which is significantly smaller, but still has like 36,000 followers or something. And it's for like the side content. But I did a couple months ago, I made a new version of the Hercules video with some of the new tools that look much cleaner. And did it as a side by side with the old one. And I put it on LinkedIn. It was my biggest post on LinkedIn ever. But I didn't post it anywhere else because I made it for LinkedIn. And then I started seeing all the big AI pages post it everywhere for like millions of views. And I was like, okay, I got to throw it up somewhere. This doesn't make sense on my first or second account. I'll just throw it on the third one. So it has like 92 million plays on it now.
Crazy.
Yeah, that one has a lot of hate on it. Just I haven't seen that much hate in a couple years. It's crazy. People are so mad. There was like a whole day where people were treating it like a live comment section. And so there's just so many. I think there's like 25,000 comments on it or something, and it just keeps going. And I posted it like a few months ago, and it's just going. It's just people being like, this is bad for humanity, AI is bad. And then my favorite one is, where's the AI that's going to do my laundry and my dishes? I want that instead of ones that are going to draw and paint for me, which is like, it's like the funniest bad copy pasta that people do because they think they're so smart. And then it's like, what do you think a washing machine is?
Right. I think they're
Like what?
working on that. I don't
No,
think that's far away.
it already
Yeah.
exists. You used to have to go down to a river
Right.
and like scrub stuff with rocks.
Right.
We have machines you put your stuff in and you press a button and it does it. That's the thing. They did it. We made it, actually. We can calm down about that. It's people being online and thinking that they're saying something unique or special. Not that there aren't valid concerns for different things, but an Instagram comment section isn't where we're ever going to get anything done, which is why you'll never catch me responding to any of that stuff because
Yeah.
it concerns me so little because the people that do get things from my work are the people that I'm interested in, the work that I do that has a positive emotional resonance are the people that I'm concerned with.
Did getting that level of exposure unexpectedly and that level of engagement and negative engagement, did that affect you mentally at all? Or have you always been pretty able to brush that off?
Oh yeah, no, I'm an artist and I'm real introverted and the exposure part of it I was really good at. There were some hangups with it. I was really good at handling that there was this huge influx.
Okay.
But it did get to a point where it was very difficult, which is why very quickly I brought in my business partner, Jordan, who's essentially my business manager for the production company. He handles all of the back end for it. And that kind of came down to how I was splitting my time. When things took off, 3 days into it, I noticed that I had basically just been laying on the floor of my apartment responding to emails because there were so many. There were so many emails. And that's when I called him and I was like, hey, there's a thing. And I'm noticing I can't keep working on this stuff because I have to respond to these emails and try and get these jobs and do this. It's kind of a whole thing. And I'm trying to figure out where to go with this. And I need help. And as far as the comment section, so I didn't respond to a comment on a video for like the first 4 months. I was a ghost. And like that was kind of a big part of the mystery with who I was and all of that was there was no personal touch outside the videos. I would post the videos, everything would be highly curated, and then I would just go completely ghost. I wouldn't talk about it. I didn't take any interviews because I think like ABC reached out and wanted a point, but they wanted to have me on just so they could bait me into talking about like the ethics.
Yeah,
And
right.
nowadays, that's something that I would absolutely do because I've been living in it for a couple of years and I have a much better perspective. As green as I was then, I knew it was a trap And I knew they were just trying to trap me in not being as prepared for something like that and being excited off of this viral success and be able to
Mm.
kind of spin a story out of it. So that was
Yeah.
early on, it was really just about like keeping my head down and sticking to the work,
Right.
to not let it get to me. Because if stuff like that happened, then it would have really started getting to me more.
Yeah. What do you think people get wrong? The broader public get wrong about the conversation about AI. Obviously, that interview would have been an example of that. But in your opinion, what are the misconceptions, or where are people steering the conversation in the wrong way?
A lot of people with good intentions like to be like, well, it takes a lot more work to do this stuff than you're seeing, which by no small metric, it absolutely does, right? Like that's, I mean, for at least some of it, like not putting in a prompt into a online video model and getting to like that stuff's very easy, but like, and like it takes a while, but it's not like hard work. But the Comfy UI stuff has taken me years to learn. Like this, it's not easy. But what it really is, and past that, is that acting as though this tech and the things that we're working on are going to like the buzzwords are a little bit crazy because I see this on the side of people that are very for it as well as against it, is that it's gonna change the film industry forever. No, I make tech demos. They're very pretty and people gain an emotional resonance. People really love the work that I do. But the first thing that happens when a film studio comes to me and says, "Hey, we want to adapt this into a series." Okay, I'll direct it. Let's go get an animation team. Cuz it doesn't work that way. And there are elements of where you can use this stuff in production lines, but like that's what we're working on developing. So I'm not making this stuff to be like, look at how it's going to take over everything and change everything. It's like, look at how cool this is and how much we're pushing it forward all the
Yeah.
time. This can fit into production pipelines. And the reason that I think that's really important is because the reason we only see sequels, adaptations, and Marvel movies is because studios won't take risks on anything anymore because it simply takes too much money and too long to make films. Back in like the mid 90s, they were pumping out mid budget dramas all the time. And we got so many fantastic films. And as a filmmaker, it's heartbreaking to see that like we just don't get that
Yeah, I
anymore
know. I know what you
because
mean.
because there's no money in film anymore.
Yeah.
There's no money in film at all. And so we need to see the costs of production come down. And that's not taking jobs away from people. If anything, because the cost associated is directly related to speeding up the production, that we're actually just going to see more films get made.
Mm.
And that's inherently a good thing. So, and we're not talking about using stable diffusion to make movies. We're talking about all the motion capture tech that we're using so that we can do, we don't have to rig up the, huge production studios and the suits to do motion capture. We can just film on a green screen and get motion capture. And like we have that's like 85% of the way there. That's really cool. And so that's what I think most people get wrong. It's like they get the intention wrong of like, this is the new art. And it's like, yeah, I'm making my little Instagram videos and it's fun and it is a movement. It's doing a big thing. But like the intention is not to take things over. The intention is to increase in the areas where there's bottlenecks and help a dying industry like revive itself.
Right. The industry trend is already what it is, and that's not going to be reversed. Unfortunately, the writing's on the wall for a lot of that stuff with the streaming services and who knows what's profitable. And the only way these companies can invest millions or billions of dollars is if they're making it somewhere else. Like Apple, they're making it from phones, then they can invest, but very few companies are actually making money from the art itself. That's the crisis, and no amount of wishful thinking is going to change that. And I'm here in Hollywood. I know enough people in the industry to know that that's a fact. That's not really debatable. Things have changed. The budgets just aren't there anymore. And to your earlier point about motion capture, people have been doing that forever. I remember there was this clip a while back that the old Disney movie, The Jungle Book, and also Robin Hood had the same motion capture element, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody did a little dance and it was exactly the same. They reused that motion capture because they already had it and it saved them time. There was more recently a documentary, I think, about Frozen on Disney, where they wanted to get something and they filmed a real person and then captured that and then turned that into the character. So Disney and animation studios have been doing this forever. You're just taking the latest spin on this time-honored tradition, basically.
Exactly. I mean, it's yeah, it has been done for a really long time, and like it's it holds a space because of how impactful it feels to watch. And there's a reason that they did do it. There's a reason they still do it, and it's you just can't copy it. Humans are really good at seeing when something is very close to human-like, but not quite. And so when you try and animate that from scratch, it will inherently feel wrong. No matter how close you get, it's just something that our brains pick up on. But if you use actual movement, it feels more natural and it just feels right. There are so many examples of motion capture used, and again, that kind of ties into the budgetary stuff. We're talking about animated movies and video games and everything, basically filming like live action movies because they all use so much motion capture. And so right now, the way that I do it is completely rigless. I can take Instagram videos and pull depth maps from them. They're like 85% of the way there. They're not like production ready perfect for films, but like that's getting there. That will be something in the next couple of years where we're able to pull perfect depth maps from from any footage, and that's really, really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. And just the ability to replace any character with any other character. If you look at the video, here's a guy in a park and we're replacing him with a realistic insect in the same park. I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing stuff, right? That hasn't been possible before. But yeah, I agree. And what's interesting about you is that you're obviously a lightning rod. And when people do react either positively or negatively to your work, it's clear that it's because of a movement and societal trends. A lot of freelancers see it as fear. Graphic designers see it as fear. People might say, where's the credit for the dancer, et cetera? What are the copyright implications of using these training models and so on? That is all being hashed out, let's say, in the public discourse at the moment. But in a practical sense, aside from the greater debate, is just these are really exciting tools that are practically very powerful. And you leaned into that a few years ago and saw tremendous success. And that's the part that I personally hear fewer people talking about. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because they're just tools, and you're able to come up with these amazing workflows that interested you. You have a community teaching people these techniques. And that to me is this very exciting part of AI right now that I hear less of. So in the brass tacks and the popular side of this, or in the technical side, let's say, what are some of the tools and workflows? What do you think people should know who want to get into this or who want to follow in your footsteps? Where should they begin?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, as a real quick disclaimer to that, because you mentioned it, I always tag all of the performers. They're always credited. And all of those that I do that are just like the ones on my Instagram are entirely non-commercial for that. Like I don't make money from those videos. Those I do for fun and for the art of it. And so, as I'm going through and I'm using performances and tagging people and doing that stuff I'm doing just because I like it. There's a lot of other processes that come in when we get to commercial stuff and where that is. But past that, where I think people should get started, I think it kind of depends on what you're looking to do with it, right? So like I'm a big proprietor in the open source.
Yeah.
Obviously, Stable Diffusion, Comfy UI, Flux, WAN 2.1, which are kind of all of the big open source models that we're all kind of focused on right now. I think WAN 2.1 is going to be kind of the next big one as far as models that are used for a long time. It's a video model, but what's really cool is that we got control net functionality for it. So we have motion capture with a video model in the open source space, which is weird. We haven't really had that before. We had it with Cog Video X, but it was kind of bad. It was really bad. And the only other place that we've had video to video with a video model was like Runway. Runways was also pretty bad, and you didn't get very much control out of it. So that's a really cool new emerging space that's going to be really good. But really, yeah, to me, it's if you have the means to learn Comfy UI, that's a really good place to start and kind of get introduced to. And yeah, like you mentioned, I teach. I don't do it as much as I'd like to, but I have a number of tutorials on my Patreon. And if you want to learn Comfy UI basics with some workflows to do stuff like I do with Stable Diffusion stuff, that's on there. I also have a guide that goes through all of the popular video models that are out. So if you want to learn about Kling and Sora and Runway and Pika and all that, I have that on there too. So before buying any credits, you can just, take a look at what I'm doing and see that. Yeah. I think that those are, but really it's even less about like what tools, and it's more about figuring out like what you're trying to do. The reason that I got to where I am is because I was trying to learn special effects techniques to bring into music videos I was doing, which is why motion capture, which is why we kind of ended up where we are now. But it was all chasing a goal of a specific thing. Because if you go in aimless, it might be fun for a bit to throw in some random and wacky stuff and see what you make. But I always think it's important to be intentional.
So you mentioned that a lot of this takes longer than people think. Obviously, it takes extraordinary computing power, especially if you're running these things on your own machine. These days, with the tech where it's at now, how long does it take you to create from start to finish one of your Instagram videos, let's say a 15 to 30 second tech demo video?
Yeah, no, for sure. So it kind of depends on I use different model infrastructures and workflows and for, different videos. And at that, it depends on which of my computers I'm using and, the speed of the GPU, because not all GPUs are built the same. And so for like a standard, like one of the water droplet ones, that takes a couple hours, maybe a little, like 15 seconds would be more like an hour, 30 seconds is 2 hours type thing. For one of the paper origami ones, it's maybe twice as long. And that's just because it's different model infrastructure. It uses an SDXL workflow instead of a Stable Diffusion 1.5 workflow. And so it's just a completely different thing. It takes more compute, and because of that, it takes longer to render out. So not like super fast by any means, but like that's okay, because it only takes a minute or two to, sometimes a few, like 3 to 5 minutes to do like a 30 frame test. And that's really where like I do a lot of testing where I sit and I pick through the video and I do different sets of 30 frames to like see, is it getting the look that I want, before I sit and I run the whole thing. And that doesn't mean it's going to be perfect all the way through. Oftentimes it's not, and it looks bad afterwards. But that's kind of how I get to a point of figuring it out, is I do a lot of like random testing through it, and then I just full shot the entire thing. There definitely are computers that are much faster than mine. I don't have 4090s in my computer, which would be the fastest I could possibly get as far as GPUs. One of them, I have an A6000, so it's got 48 gigs of VRAM. That's twice as big as any consumer level GPU. It's twice as big as a 4090 is, but it's very slow. It's very, very slow. And that's kind of the trade-off for having that much compute. And it was more important to me to have more to be able to work with than just speed.
That's fascinating. So, what kind of computer rig do you think somebody needs to get into this? Can you do it with an off the shelf computer, or do you really need to have something custom?
The first 8 months of doing this when things blew up, I did everything on Google Collab. I didn't have a computer good enough to run anything locally.
Hmm.
I was doing things professionally adjacent before stuff blew up. So it was like if I shot a music video that I implemented this stuff into, then it was worth the $50 a month for the high tier of collab credits.
Hmm.
But there's definitely like a subscription on there for like $10 a month that if you just want to play around with this stuff a little bit, like that works. Or, and there's a link on my Patreon. I have a little partnership with Think Diffusion. They make it all really easy because they have Comfy UI and a number of other tools loaded up, and you get to choose what kind of GPU you want to be on, and they all cost different amounts, and it's pretty affordable for what it is to get loaded up on a GPU on there. You go and you spend $20 and you can give this stuff a shot. And so it's really accessible from that. The thing is like these models are free to use, but the compute absolutely is not. So you're either going to be paying, because you do need at least a good GPU. I wouldn't try and do this stuff without having like 16 gigs of VRAM. And at that, you're looking on spending, if you're going from scratch and you need a computer, at least like $1,500 or something. Maybe more. Maybe you could get something for like 1,000, but you're still spending like $1,000 to get a computer going.
That makes sense. So that's pretty nice that you have these tools that you don't need to own the computer. I didn't actually know about that. That's new for me. Let's go back. So you rose to Instagram fame, something like 1,500 followers to 450,000 followers in just a stupid amount of time, like a couple months, right? Which is almost unheard
that
of.
that was like a week.
A week, okay, 1,500 to 400,000 in a week, thereabouts.
I went from 2,800 to 800,000 in like 2.5 weeks.
That is so. Your phone was just like, ba-ding, 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 ba-ding,
Oh,
like,
my notifications have been off for 2 years now on all apps. I turned it off on everything. It was, that part of it. Like if I would sometimes as a joke around friends go in and turn my notifications on and my phone would overheat. Like it was crazy.
Oh, that's so epic. So if you go back 3 years ago or 2 years ago, like you said, before all that happened, what is something that you wouldn't believe about your life right now?
See, that's the thing though. It's like I always knew where I was going. I mean maybe there's some little ones of like people I've gotten to work with and stuff, but like I always knew where I was going. And that's one of the things that like my team praises me on regularly. Is like they've said to me multiple times, they're like, you're built for this. It couldn't have happened to somebody who knew how to handle it better. And not that it was always easy. There were times where it was really tough in the early days trying to figure out where I fit into all of this. But this is always where I was trying to get to. And it's a conversation that I have when I'm speaking to a lot of my, again, my background was in making music videos for smaller artists. So a lot of my friends are musicians and are constantly like that. This is what they're trying to get. They're trying to get this mass level exposure. And I constantly have conversations with them that are like, what are you going to do when you get here? I knew what I was going to do. I've been running a production studio for years. I knew that I was going to do that on a much higher level, that I was going to take this and spin it into working for some of the biggest companies in the world. I was ready for it. And that doesn't mean it was easy. And there were times when things got really messed up, but like I always had my eyes set on that it was about taking the thing I'm doing and just scaling it out and scaling it out. I guess some of the things that past me wouldn't believe. I got to do some work for Wu-Tang Clan last year. That was
I saw
tight.
that in your sizzle reel. That was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a string of time where we realized that if we sent Instagram messages to people, they'd probably see it because a big account, let's give it a shot. And Raekwon hit back. And nothing came of it at first. And then eventually, we were kind of playing with the idea of making a music video for him. And then he called me one day and was like, hey, I need somebody to do concert visuals for this show with the Colorado Symphony. And we have 11 days.
Oh, dang.
That was a lot of work I had to do in like 11 days. And I was working on other stuff. And after I said, yeah, he patched in a 3-way call with RZA. And RZA told me he was proud of me, which is like a weird thing that happened.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
that's like that was huge to me as like, cause
Yeah.
I'm just a fan, you know?
Yeah.
And I worked really hard and I made a bunch of visuals and then I
Yeah.
got to go out and watch them perform with a bunch of stuff I made in the background. That's one that one hit home really hard. That was like a special, like, I really felt like I did something important for that one. That was like the young version of me, like kid me, would have been very, very excited about that.
So 2 years of grinding, thousands of hours of render time later. Are you still as excited and passionate about this as when you began?
I typically have this thing where a couple years into something, I kind of start getting a little bit bored of it. And so I kind of switch up and I make some changes to like what I'm hyper focusing on. This one hasn't really switched for me. And I think it's because, and I brought this up, my girlfriend's a professional graphic designer, and we were kind of talking about passion and stuff. And I was like, look, graphic design or photography, videography, it's already reached its peak. You're not going to get into this and change the whole thing in this medium that's been around for as long as it has. Like everything's kind of been done. If you want to know how to do something, you can look up a YouTube tutorial. It all kind of exists. That's what's so exciting over here is everything that I'm doing now is brand new. Nobody's done it before. We're constantly breaking ground, and that's really exciting. And even a couple years into it, and still we're just breaking ground. It's all brand new, and I think that that's something that I feel like an adventurer. Like
Mm.
I feel like I feel like I'm exploring new territory. I call it the Wild West a lot, because that's what it feels like. It's the Wild West. It's a lawless place, and we're just figuring it all out so that infrastructure can be built. But like there needs to be that first foundation of figuring out like what this thing is before all the infrastructure can be built, and that's what we're doing right now.
That's awesome. So was your girlfriend somebody, since she's a graphic designer, somebody who just sent you a death threat and that's how you met or something like hers was the job you're replacing?
Um, no. What's funny about it? She got into Comfy UI with me
Okay.
because like I come from an artist background and was fascinated by this. It's not, oh cool, it's gonna make my job easier. If anything, it's made everything like way harder for me. Was new, more out there things to play with, and so most other artists agree with that, when they see it. And so like the first time we like talked, she sent me like a video of a book she was reading that was about color theory, and I sent back a video of me working through a comfy workflow that I was working on building. And she was so excited about it and was like, this is fascinating that this is what it looks like and you can do all these things. And I find that that is how most people are. Like, if I bring an artist in to sit in my office and see what my computers look like and see what my workflows look like and then try and run them through it and explain it to them, nobody comes out of it being like, this is an uncomplicated thing and it's stealing jobs. They come out of it being like, this is insane that you do this.
Yeah, that's certainly the vibe I get from over here. Well, James, I think it's awesome. I mean, first of all, thanks for being so generous with your time, and thank you for coming out of your shell on this and being willing to do some interviews. I know that I appreciate it. And yeah, like Lightning Rod, you're not just a guy, you're not just an artist, you're representing a movement for better or for worse. And there aren't very many people in the world who can say that. But I think you can. And I hope you continue to break ground. And I'm glad that you found some kind of stability where it's not, where the balance between hate and love has shifted. I'm glad that people are now coming to terms with this. I think we're going to see more of that as time goes on, as people start recognizing Photoshop as a tool, Figma as a tool. There are many tools that we use in our lives. You're just using a new type of tool and creating that tool as you go. Fundamentally, what could be more human than that? That's my opinion.
Absolutely. It's we live in a time where people like to get scared about stuff. There's always something new to be worried about and scared about. And, in some places that makes sense. I think this one's a weird fight to pick. And mostly because the deeper you get into it, the more you realize that, like, it's all overblown anyway. Mid-Journey taking jobs from graphic designers, companies maybe tried to do that for like a month and then realized that they actually still needed the graphic designers to do all of the heavy lifting to make any of the work production ready.
Yeah.
It'll level itself out. I find that new industries that do shake things up typically just take a little while to kind of find their footing and level out till everybody's comfortable with it. And I think that's what's happening now, is we're just looking at like a new industry kind of trying to make its own way.
And I just want to go on the record here and say that I'm sorry for all those nasty messages I sent you on LinkedIn. It was before I met you, dude. I didn't realize it was after the Ambien had kicked in. It was 3 a.m. I'm sorry about that. I see now that you're a good guy. that was not. So, publicly, I feel like I need to issue an apology. But yeah, thanks, dude. It's super fascinating. I'll continue to be a big fan of your work. Everybody should join your Patreon. It's one of the few Patreons out there that's genuinely worth it. I mean, if you really want to learn something new for a very affordable price, get on that, because there's very little in this world that is going to be as exciting and interesting as hopping on that train. So to close things out here, James, any parting words, any little last messages you want to get in before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could say something kind of quickly. We did a lot of talking kind of about industry stuff and all that. I feel really grateful to be able to make the little artsy things that were things I used to dream of as a kid, and be able to bring that into a real space where I can share it with people, and it brings them a lot of joy. There's a reason that it's simplicity, and it's because I think that the real art is in the human connection. And when you give a simple canvas for somebody to kind of paint their own thoughts onto, more and more people can resonate with that, and it brings people together. And that's the goal. And I'm happy that that's what my space exists for now, is that I get to do that. And I'm happy that I get to wake up and do that every day.
A great way to wrap it up. Thanks a lot, James. It's been an absolute pleasure. And with that, the official podcast.